Give me a typical day of eating for you at this point in your life. What does that look like?
Oh, okay. Well, I typically start out with, bacon and eggs, and I like the bacon soft. I like to eat that fat. I add an extra yolk to my eggs and some cream. So a lot of there's protein there, but it's a lot of fat. Sometimes instead of eggs, I have oatmeal, and I put lots of butter on the oatmeal. For lunch, it could be pâté, which I really like. About once a week, I try to eat fish eggs, caviar. There's you can buy whitefish caviar at Whole Foods, 2 ounces for $10. It's very reasonable. And, today I had lamb chops with the fat and some potatoes cooked in the fat and, beans with butter on them. So, lots of fat.
You mentioned oatmeal there. Let's talk about prep when it comes to plants and the way you go about that. You can use oatmeal as an example and then expand out talking about how you make these foods more palatable.
Well, this is a big theme in Nourishing Traditions and also in the Weston A Price Foundation. Plants have a lot of toxins, and we'll start with grains. Grains are coated with a bran. I call it the plastic coating because it's got preservatives in it to keep what's inside the grain fresh and from spoiling. And those preservatives include phytic acid, enzyme inhibitors, lectins, things that are either deplete you of minerals, are hard to digest, or are very irritating to the gut. And traditional cultures always process these grains to get rid of those preservatives. They're preservatives for the grain, and you don't want to eat preservatives. So it usually involves soaking in an acidic medium or soaking for a long time till it turns acidic. The sourdough method for bread. In the case of oatmeal in Ireland, they soaked it overnight. My Irish mother-in-law said she soaked it over the pilot light. So it was just warm, and you add a splash of something acidic like vinegar or lemon juice or whey or yogurt because you need the low pH to activate all the enzymes that get rid of the toxins. And the next day, you cook that oatmeal really well. Grains need to be cooked, not baked like granola and not eaten raw like muesli. They need to be cooked. And you add salt. That's when you add salt. And of course, I eat my oatmeal with lots of butter and maple syrup sometimes or honey. It's okay to have natural sweeteners in moderation.
For something like that oatmeal, soaking it overnight, using something acidic, does it need to be rinsed in the morning to get rid of the plant
No,
toxins? No.
no, they're all broken down. So, like phytic acid is broken down into phosphorus, which you can use, and oxygen and carbon and so forth. They're just broken down.
Okay, give some other examples of things people are commonly eating, assuming they're healthy, that need that extra step.
Yeah, let's talk about kale. Now I kinda get them mixed up, but I think kale has oxalates and, um, enzyme inhibitors and, goitrogens in it. And we're eating kale the complete wrong way as chips and in smoothies and, raw. And these kind of rough green vegetables need to be cooked. And in the southern greens, were chopped up fine, the kale and the mustard greens and so forth, and cooked a long time with something fat, um, turkey tails or knuckle bones or something like that. And then it's delicious that way and doesn't give you an upset stomach, easy to digest. Animals have a lot more of their disk space devoted to digestion than humans. Our disk space is devoted to our brains. And we don't have as complicated as digestive tracts as, say, a cow. A cow eats grass. We can't eat grass. We can't digest it. But the cow has 4 stomachs and a huge microbiome if we've treated her right. And she can eat grass, but We can't, and I guess if we cooked the grass, maybe we'd be able to eat it, but, these things are not good foods for humans.
When it comes to foods like kale, like oatmeal, when they're prepared properly, are you including those for specific nutrients or just for diversity within the diet? I just
Well,
want to understand the goal of having these things that require extra care.
you can not eat them if you want to, but right, it's a very, boring diet if you don't add other things to it, you know? It's a boring diet without vegetables. It's a boring diet without grains, and you do need carbs. You need at least 50 grams of carbs a day for your thyroid gland to work. So, I'm very concerned about these diets where they, try to avoid all carbs, like the carnivore diet, it's a very limited palate. No nuts, no potatoes, no grains, no fruit, no vegetables. I try to bring kids up on a diet like that. Try to bring children up without potatoes. Good luck.
When you see these success stories of people eating only meat, in your mind, is that just a short term thing?
I think it's very dangerous. We had a young man on our farm who was eating like that, eating meat and, only meat, only raw meat, and carrot juice, I think, something like that, and he became very anemic, and he wasn't well after a while.
Let's talk about the microbiome and how you look at that.
Well,
Classically, in the health world, people say we want to eat a diverse amount of plants. We want to get a whole bunch of fiber, and that's going to feed the microbiome. They're going to, in turn, make short chain fatty acids for us. Is that the way you see it?
you need to feed the microbiome with bacteria, good bacteria, and that's where the lacto-fermented foods come in. Every single culture, traditional culture in the world had lacto-fermented foods, starting with, cabbage in Europe, sauerkraut, and other vegetables that were used as pickles and, condiments. Africa was the real land of fermented foods because they had so many fermented beverages. They made beer out of sorghum and it wasn't alcoholic, it was very, very sour, an acquired taste, I have to say. They made it out of bananas, they made it out of all kinds of things. And when they were working in the fields, they could drink up to a gallon of this per day. So they were getting lots of bacteria, and that's number 1. Yes, and then the digestion of certain carbs will, create short chain fatty acids, which the, bacteria love, but I think a much more fun way is to just eat butter or coconut oil, which has these short chain fatty acids ready made. The most important one is butyric acid. I've read people on the internet saying, "Oh, you get butyric acid from coconut oil." That is not correct. There's no butyric acid in coconut oil. The best source of butyric acid is butter. It's named after butter.
So you mentioned this threshold you want to see people getting to of at least 50 grams of carbs a day for the thyroid. That's in a territory where potentially somebody could still be in ketosis. How do you feel about being ketogenic and producing ketones? Is that something you like to dip into periodically, or how do you see it?
I never think about it. I don't think it's necessary. Um, I did try a diet like that once. I could only stay on it about 3 days. I got dizzy. I just didn't agree with me at all.
If somebody is eating the way we're describing today, how do you feel about supplements to complement that and round things out? Any we would need to include?
Well, they have their place. I'm a big fan of cod liver oil, which is a food. But we take it as a supplement. Or some people do in pills. I just take it like cod liver oil. And that's very important for vitamins A and D. And then you want a really good source of vitamin K2, and that would be any poultry fat, poultry liver, emu oil. There's a couple of brands of emu oil that are high in K2, and the high vitamin butter oil from, that Dr. Price invented. And just be sure that you're eating butter and egg yolks and the animal fats from grass-fed animals to get adequate K2. So those are the two basic supplements. I think we're moving away from vitamins, and people are doing things like desiccated oyster or desiccated liver instead of vitamins, and I think that's the way to go. Even traditional people's dried and powdered things like shellfish.
When people start taking these things in concentrated forms, well, not concentrated, but almost as supplements or as supplements in the case of desiccated liver, but cod liver oil, you mentioned emu oil. How do we know how much we need?
Well, that's a good question. You're not taking a lot of any of these. So it's a teaspoon of cod liver oil. It's 2 capsules of desiccated liver. I wouldn't take a lot of any of these, but small amounts, it seems to me, would be fine.
There's also this other layer of cooking and how that can impact things like dairy, which I know you're a fan of raw, but also liver. There's people that say raw liver versus cooked. So bring in the aspect of cooking of these foods and how that can change things.
Yeah, it's different for each type of food. And now the traditional cultures that Dr. Price studied ate liver both raw and cooked, and they ate their meat both raw and cooked, and their fish both raw and cooked. He didn't say why, he didn't speculate why. I have a theory that when you eat these things raw, you get a lot of B6, but you don't digest the protein very well, and cooking unfolds these really tightly bound proteins that you have in meat, and your digestive enzymes can get on them and digest better. So the meats and the organ meats can be raw and cooked. Dairy should never be cooked because it has very fragile proteins in it that are totally warped and distorted by high temperatures. So you can do raw milk, really raw cheese. And a lot of cheese in the United States says it's raw, but it's not because they heat it to 150 degrees and the FDA allows them to say that's raw. So you have to be very careful and ask, how high they heat the milk. And you can make a raw milk yogurt. Kefir is a great fermented beverage because you don't have to heat it. It ferments at room temperature. Okay, so and then grains, it's the opposite. They need to be soaked and cooked a long time. They need fire and water, as the Chinese would say. Most vegetables need to be cooked and cooked well. That releases the nutrients that are bound up in the cellulose. The cellulose is indigestible for humans, and the cooking breaks down the cellulose and all these anti-nutrients. Some people have good digestion and can eat salads. The salad vegetables are bred to be more tender, and that's fine, but I know people who can't eat salads. They cannot digest raw vegetables.
How do you look at different diets for different people? Somebody who is overweight, say they're in that range of insulin resistant to diabetic, or just have a chronic disease versus somebody that's gotten their health back or maintained that. How do you look at different things that we want to include and avoid for sick people versus people that are just maintaining?
Well, for a diabetic or someone who's overweight, your best friend is fat. You don't need insulin to digest fat, and the fat keeps the blood sugar stable and also supports thyroid function, so you have more faster metabolism. And you do want to restrict carbohydrates, not completely, but yeah, not too much. And I think very good for overweight is to skip one meal a day, to fast one meal a day. Personally, I think it's best to eat breakfast and a big lunch around 1 o'clock, and then not eat dinner. But there's only one way you can do that, and that's to eat lots of fat. If you don't eat a lot of fat in that midday meal, you're going to be so hungry at night when you're trying to go to sleep. So, but a growing boy athlete, he needs more protein than most people need. He needs lots of fat and he needs carbs. He needs everything and he needs to eat a lot. So everybody's different in how much they eat and the proportions that they eat. Nobody should be eating processed food, of course.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're gonna wanna head over here and catch the full episode. I'll see you over there. How do you look at somebody trying to form a healthy diet only on plants?
Can't be done. Over the long term, you're going to get very sick. Dr. Price tried to find a healthy population that only ate plant foods, and he had to admit